We're starting like this, apparently. This is so good.
I had to mute myself. That was too hard.
All right, for everybody tuning in right now, for the masses, we were just trying to sit in silence and we failed, but we danced. So that was fun.
Worked out.
It was a pleasure to dance with you all, Troika, virtually. This is
In
a Broken Bound
silence.
podcast. Exactly. It's the way to do it. This is, in fact, a Broken Bound podcast. I am Jason Truding. I play in percussion. This is Troika. On my screen, Paulina Michaels in the top left, Casey Blesinger right under her, Shelby Blesinger McKay right under me. Welcome you all. Thanks for hanging.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That was just the best way to jump into this thing. So good.
It worked.
It's really good, right? Our Brooklyn Bound that you all are playing on is May 27th, and I'm psyched to talk about what you all are doing. But we want to zoom out a bit and talk more just about Troika for a second. Yeah, how did you all meet and start playing? What's the history of Troika? And I can call on people, but I can also, you all are a band. Let's start with the organic.
I'll start it, and then y'all like pop in. So it all starts with our relationships to each other. So obviously Casey and I are siblings. If that wasn't obvious, now I hope it is. So we've known each other forever. I met Paulina in my undergrad and her undergrad at Auburn University in 2011. Yes. 10. And we did school together, lived together, all these things. And then we all went our separate ways and went to grad school. Like Casey had met Paulina coming to visit. Paulina and Casey both in my wedding while we were in grad school. All these crazy like spider webs of our relationships. And then when all three of us were in different graduate school programs, I was at North Texas, Casey was at Duquesne in Pittsburgh, Paulina is at Cincinnati Conservatory in Cincinnati. Essentially, we all started having recitals, and Casey basically fostered us playing together for the first time. And now I'm going to pass it.
Yeah, our first like iteration of playing together, and even like the first time Shelby and I had played together since we were in high school, just due to circumstances and stuff, was in 2016. I was putting together my master's recital at Duquesne and was wanting to program some sort of ensemble piece or another, and Duquesne was just not much of a chamber music school. It was a very good orchestral school, and that was mostly the focus of for the people there, which was wonderful for that purpose. But in terms of having people that were super jazzed about playing contemporary percussion ensemble, not so much. So sort of like a combination of like, if I'm going to put something together, I'd like for it to be with people that I'm vibing with that actually want to be there, not that are just like doing it as a favor to me. And then I think they were both having similar-ish enough experiences that like, even for Shelby, you were in New York by this point.
Yeah, my first year.
Yeah, like Shelby would travel from New York, Paulina would travel from Cincinnati, and like even to play, we played one piece. We played Jonathan Russell's "You Are Here," and like did a crazy amount of logistical planning just for that, because all three of us were just sort of like had this itch that we were like, just do it now, like just do the effort and just do it now.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Does that all check out, Paulina? I know, caveats. Paulina is up at like 6 in the morning to do this. She's the MVP. She's the superstar. But does that all check out, or do you want to correct the record at all?
No, it all checks out. I'm bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and always happy to talk about it.
You are bright.
Yeah, we were all in different cities, and I think we valued our personal relationships and the minimal playing that we had done together. I had never played with Casey at that point, only with Shelby, but Shelby had done some playing with Casey. just from being family. And I think we were all just jazzed to play together, and it was a lot of fun and really, really gratifying experience. So even though after that, I moved to Pittsburgh shortly after, and Shelby stayed in New York, and then Casey moved to New York, and then I moved to Seattle. So we've never all been in the same place, but the times that we do get together, that we do get to play together, and the projects that we have been working on from a distance is also gratifying, that it just keeps the machine going.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I also think it feels easy. It feels like not hard to get together. Like all like playing aside, like sometimes you're like, oh my hands, whatever. But like the energy in the room is not hard, which is nice. I think that's how
you
we
want to be together.
Yeah.
I think that's so cool. Just so much of what you're saying actually resonates in terms of like, I think when I think about the beginnings of So, it was the people like I wanted to hang out with. It was the, where we'd go after rehearsal to hang out. It's all those things, but you all have the added thing of like, we were all in the same school, and you all were like, okay, wait a minute, I want this thing, but I'm gonna make, there's this extra layer of effort, which is really awesome to hear about. It feels really special. I think the first time I heard you all play was at Soci. Is it possible you guys have done two things at Soci? I mean, Paulina's Soci alum.
Oh, we have.
But you did, yeah, you played Quinn. I think the first thing I heard was you all playing Quinn Collins trio.
Yeah.
Is that right? It was like maybe Soci 10th anniversary. Yeah. Many wonderful and embarrassing stories about hearing you all play. I think by the end, Paulina, I had, everybody was like, oh, there's a Soci alum here, but Paulina plays in Troika. And I'm like, oh my gosh, which one's Paulina? And I went up to you, Casey, and I was like, hey, Paulina, good to see you. It's like so much stress and so much embarrassment on my part. And then it's like,
Josh,
you see
like
Shelby
never,
and Casey. Yeah.
There was like
Josh
a running,
like never lets you live it down either. It's so funny.
But then Josh did the same thing to a friend of ours who happened to be in the studio and did the exact same thing, went up to them and was like, oh my God, Paulina, it's so good to see you.
This is a podcast of hot takes.
It is. This is
just a bit we had going for a while. It was awesome.
Name calling.
Well, as soon as you see Casey and Shelby standing next to each other, it's like, oh, right.
We're exactly the same from the nose
Casey,
up.
when you signed on this morning, before I saw your name, just when your face pops on, I'm about to say, hey, Shelby, before I see, it's like so embarrassing. But that show was very cool. What I really want to talk about is that show was very cool. And I loved hearing you guys play that piece, and really loved Quinn's piece. And then you guys came back and played another show, more of stuff. It feels like it was like a year later or a couple years later, and it was maybe further into you all developing what your vibe was, what your aesthetic was, what music you love to play. So what's that trajectory been in terms of aesthetically? Like, starting off, it's just like you love to play together, and I imagine when you love to play together, in some ways it doesn't matter what you're playing, just because you love playing together. But then you develop this sense of, no, this is what we love to do. What if we round robin the opposite way? Unless I'm putting anybody on the spot. What do you think about that, Pauline? Like, how is your aesthetic kind of thing developed?
I think it's been actually really interesting and kind of continuing developing, especially right now. We've really been kind of diving into what do we want to do and how do we want to put ourselves forward. A lot of what we play is a compromise of our individual styles and the things that each of us really love. So I'll let Shelby and Casey talk about what they love, but I really love experimental music and sound, and like just diving in to what can I pull out of this one very simple instrument. And improvisation is a big part of that. And so Shelby and Casey, they let me run away with that, and they let me kind of dive into that and experiment with that and find pieces that allow for that space. So that's kind of a part of it, I think, is honoring each of our own personal loves in music and making sure that we are fulfilling the things that each of us need, because you don't always get that in other professional settings. So that's such a big part of it.
That's really cool. And Pauline, for you, is that either what drew you to CCM, or was that a love that came out of CCM? When I think it makes sense a lot right now when you started to describe that, in terms of like, I know Jim Coley most, I think, but I also know Al and Rusty pretty well. And like, the vibe of really, yeah, experimentation and sound based things and focusing deep on. Is that something that drew you to CCM, or is that something that you left with?
It's kind of a combination. So my first, well, yes, it definitely drew me to CCM because I got a little nugget of it from Soci and got really excited about it. And I thought it was so cool and found myself at CCM. And then a year into that, I went to Chosen Vale and got to meet Tim Feeney and sit in on some sessions with him. And that was like,
Awesome.
It still feels that way. So I think just the combination of being in these different scenarios that were so different than the approach in undergrad really kind of sparked that curiosity, and it's just something that I always come back to wherever I am.
That's so cool. Oh, I love this round robin. Casey, what do you? That's I love the idea that Troika is a sum of kind of these approaches that you all are bringing. So, Casey, where are you at with that?
Yeah, I would say I definitely agree with that, and especially you mentioned sort of directly like our trajectory from Soci was the first one 2018. Shelby, is that right? Okay, the first one was 2018 when we played Quinn's piece, to 2019 when we did the longer show. Was, at least from my perspective, was like a really interesting year of trial and error. Was like a really interesting year of like, pull anything and everything you could possibly find that may in some way be interesting for us. We were on and I would say this is an ongoing thing, but like especially starting in that year, just dove into just I would say like the project of finding music that was relevant to us, and that step alone was a very long and still pretty difficult process. It's a really fulfilling process, and it's really interesting to just what feels like dig into every available corner of work of composers writing new stuff that's already written, stuff that could be pushed and pulled and changed a little bit, like anything and everything. And we did a lot of that sort of work of like taking stuff and going like, do we like this? Do we like aspects of it? Do we, if we were to play it, would we present it in the form it's in now? Would we want to ask to make our own sort of edits to it? Like those sorts of conversations. And I think it started a really good process of us like fostering this idea of like, everything is a good starting point, and maybe the starting point isn't 100% the thing that we would want to produce, but it gives us a cool opportunity to be like, well, what is it about this one specific thing? If we don't like it completely, it's been fun to be able to say like, well, what's the aspects of it that we're connecting to? What's like the thing we can identify, and then either like, okay, we'll like flesh out things like this, or look for help to like help sort of like fine tune like bigger questions about the kind of stuff we're looking to make and continue making in the future.
I love, like, I feel like I was not that person when I was your age. Like I was way more like, I defined so much of what I liked and by what I didn't like at that time. And I feel like being in Princeton and being around the composition department here, specifically some of the folks I'm closer friends with, Steve Mackey and Dan, and like they'll go to a concert with the idea of like, what do I like? Like not go to the concert and be like, what do I, what do I hate? Like what this sucks, but just like looking in every piece for what's interesting, and then it feels like that's part of what you were just describing, Casey, of like something comes to your plate, like what is it here that I can get with and go further in, not like what are all the things that are going to make me not want to do this,
Yeah, and like this is one of those things that like I, at least for myself personally, that I've sort of have noticed and have been able to like sort of lock in on in the last, like especially in the last few months as we've been working on these projects of doing more original stuff, because I very much see myself as like a kind of like a nuts and bolts musician. Where I like have a hard time connecting just like general intuition. I know how to build stuff. And even in like a musical way, I'm like, I know how things work, so I know how to build it up. Even if I'm not the type of musician that's like, that knows how to just like produce, you know, can just like know what it's supposed to be off the top of their head.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's been like a really cool process, being like, just hone in on the, even if it's like little details of stuff that you're just like, I liked the way that this one thing moved in this one way. And it's fun to just be like, I can use this for something else.
Yeah. I'm psyched to hear what Shelby has to contribute to this. But before we pass the mic, is there, if Paulina's going to bring something maybe that's more experimental or sound oriented or improvisational, is there some kind of character, like to a piece that you may bring to the table? Is there some way to talk about that? Like you bring super groovy tunes to the table, like, or you bring like what, you know, what is that vibe that you like to bring?
Yeah, I've been sort of setting myself in the like the groove corner. Like I like to do,
I nailed it.
Yeah, I like to do, I'm here to put, you know, if we're adding drum set, if we're adding in like, yeah, you're like your groove foundation stuff, that's usually where I'm going.
Cool.
Yeah, Casey, you are the groove champion.
The groove champion.
Groove champion.
Cool. So Shelby, how's that all checking out for you? And what do you?
No, yeah, I agree with. I don't think agree is the right word. I agree with all of it. Like it's all true. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. There we go. I don't know anything. I would say like, so the first piece we did that Casey mentioned at her recital, Jonathan Russell's "You Are Here." Part of why we chose that piece was, I think we just like, I don't know who found it, but it's so simple, but it's beautiful. Like it's just, I mean, these are not approachable instruments when you're just like on the street, but like glockenspiel, crotales, vibraphone.
Yeah,
but
that was a soci piece. Sorry, was that a soci piece? Paulina?
I think
Not while I was there, but maybe it was.
Yeah, it might have been.
Cool.
But it's beautiful. But what's so funny about it is we all listen to our own click track. We're not listening to each other and getting cues off each other, except for like one section. It's the very end. But then you step out and you listen to the recording, or hopefully the audience gets this, is if you just like close your eyes, it feels like very ethereal. And like to me, this is where I get in this weird headspace of like, I feel like I identify very similarly to like Paulina's love and Casey's love. And usually I can't decide which one I'm feeling at the moment.
Love it.
And I actually think a lot of the pieces we play have both of those components. Mm-hmm. And I think some of our projects have gotten to be the same. Like there's some days that I'm just like, I want to play a lot of notes and it's going to groove and I'm just going to have a lot of fun. And then there's other days that I'm like, I just want to feel like the wind is going through my hair and I'm hearing tones. And it's true. It's true. I don't know what to do. And I think this is my lifelong problem of not being able to make decisions. But so what I think about when I think about like trajectory is we actually, two pieces we played a couple times and we really, really love. We need to like sometime record it just to like get them down. But we played, Olivia Kiefer's He Said, She Said drawing game, which is originally a vibraphone solo with a track. And we've played Finola Miraval's Falling Flames. And both of these pieces they're not free form. Like you're given some notes, you're given some direction, but you can take and run. And I actually think those pieces are a really good like identifier for our styles sometimes, is because sometimes they get really fast and they get really groovy and they get really fun. And then they also expand and relax and they get to this magical headspace and in different ways. And I actually think those pieces kind of like, when we found them, we were like, oh, we love these because we get to improv in them a little bit. We get to like make decisions for ourselves on what we want it to be at the time. Like we've changed Olivia's piece every single time we've ever played it. And it's awesome. Does it, it's just one of those things that I'm like, that's where I'm seeing our trajectory. And I think during the pandemic, because we haven't seen each other in over a year in person, we were just like, I don't really want to learn a piece and just like send you it and do all, we just weren't feeling inspired by that. And so we started, I think Paulina had, or Casey had the idea of like, here's this cool recording I got. And then we just started, like, I don't think any of us would be like, I'm a composer. But now I'm not going to say I'm a composer, but now I'm like, oh, I can make something out of this. And we're producing it, and it's very fun. And it's
so
nice
you're composing. That's interesting. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure we're composing.
Well, I don't know.
I think we're just putting sounds together and calling it a song.
I love it. I'm gonna support you in this moment while also calling bullshit over here. I'm gonna support you in this moment because I went through that moment too. But it seems to me you're making things. You're making things out of nothing with sound. That's crazy. You guys are awesome composers. It's really fun.
We're not composers. We're just putting sounds together.
We're just having a round robin time of fun.
I love it. I'm supportive of you because I was totally there. The next time we talk, we'll go deeper into that. But that's exciting. It's exciting to be making things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And has that's been a pandemic thing? It's kind of like, that's awesome. That's really great. So does that kind of lead us to some of what if we want to talk for a second about the Brooklyn Bound set? It feels like we've kind of gotten there in a natural way because part of the set is some of this new non-composition.
Yes.
It's not composition.
Some of this organized sound. I'm so sorry. I'm
Sounds please.
being unhelpful. So what's
sounds put there?
Sound. So what's on the set? There's two. You guys are doing some Fong Tran music, and you're doing some Troika composed music.
We actually still don't know what to call it. We still haven't figured it out. We have a really hard time with titles also.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
Titles and names and identifying something we're really bad at.
I'm feeling so comfortable in this hang. If you ever need a fourth, there are some reasons why I'm a bad fit, but there are other reasons why I'm a perfect fit in this hang. I think we had one of the worst experiences of our lives trying to come up with a name for something, and we were in this like meeting for maybe an hour, and it was awful. Yeah. We were just like,
I don't
know. Do I name it the first word I see? Like,
Well, so Casey, tell us about part of the set.
Yeah, so the part we can talk about just leading up to the stuff that we're producing, the original stuff that we're producing. So earlier in the pandemic time, I don't remember exactly when it was. I think it was probably in the summer. We sort of circled around this idea of, like, we had been talking for a number of years about, doing some more stuff during live shows that was improvisational or semi-improvisational, or in some way wanting to have some outlet that was self-produced something or another. And at that point, that was like kind of as detailed as we had managed to get. We were like, we know that this is a direction. We'll figure out how we're going to get there eventually. And so over the pandemic, like Shelby said, we weren't feeling particularly inspired by the idea of trying to work up, a completely notated piece, knowing that it would be almost impossible, or just, it wasn't the type of project we were wanting to do. So we came up with this idea of, all of us in our own time, in our own day-to-day lives, start collecting just source recordings of just sounds around you that you think are interesting. Most of them have been some sort of like nature sound, or it's, street noise, like just whatever it is. And we started this project of just producing these short, what we are calling sketches, like the goal being like 60 to 90 second little vignettes, snippets, use the source recordings in like pick one, use it for whatever that thing is going to be. And then each person after you take your source recording, use it however you want to use it to make your foundation, each person goes and adds one layer on top of it. And
Awesome.
then it's to just sort of try to create something in a short amount of time. And it was sort of like a project for us in doing stuff that's more free form, like putting ourselves in a position to be like, just make it, get it done, like work on getting, just even being happy with something that's like, maybe this isn't my ideal thing, but we're going to finish it.
Yeah.
And then, it's giving us a lot of excuses over the pandemic to work on recording ourselves and editing music and like editing audio and stuff that have done in the past but have relatively limited experiences on. So we're just like, we're going to come up with this project to facilitate a couple of things at once, which has been really fun. And we've gotten really into it, and we have gotten a number of sketches finished and released, and we really liked them. And then when we were approached with doing the Brooklyn Bound, we had the idea of taking the first 3 of them that we had produced and sort of taking all of those tracks and pushing them into like one bigger sort of what we're calling like a semi-structured sort of improv set. So we took the like finished project, made it into one piece, and then sort of doing the same process over that.
Oh, cool. So
there's an element of like what is like completed electronics, and then each person has their live playing on top of it.
I love the process of making them. Sounds very, very cool. Like something that struck me about when you were talking about how they came together which was like, it really resonated with me, the idea of like, oh, what could we make that would be cool? It seems like the brainstorm was a little bit like, we're playing live shows, what could be a nice thing to have on a live show that like has some freedom and feel like you can feel the room and you can make something in the moment. And then it feels to me like maybe the world was like, or you could use that in this remote. But like, so like Shelby, what was the process? Like, it sounds like you started brainstorming these with the idea that you all would be together playing shows, and then the process turned very much into a remote way of working. But seems like it gave you a way of working during this quarantine that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
True. Yeah, I would say, I think it gave us the time to do something we want to do, but we were just like, oh, we don't have the time. We don't have the time. And actually, like, maybe it was a good thing. When the pandemic started, or maybe a month or so after, we were like, well, how can we like get together? Everything sucks. Like, what can we do? And we would like get online, and we would use these like platforms. They also have Jam in their name, Jam Kazam or Jamulus, and you all log on and you share a server and you can hear each other. And we would like practice. We would play like literally like stone books, stuff like that. Just like and you're never together. Like, you cannot sync Seattle and New York. Like, you cannot. But we were like, oh, this is so nice. Like, getting to do something together. And I don't actually know like where the sketch thing happened. I think it was probably like someone went to the ocean and they were like, oh, how nice is this? And like did a little like recording. And then someone was like, oh, I'm gonna like play some tunes over it. And it just kind of like, it would round robin actually, like how we're doing it now. And for instance, one day I was feeling pretty edgy, and I like put my Zoom next to my computer and just recorded me typing emails. And I was like, this is my life. Like, whatever.
I hate this.
The cat meme. And we made a recording out of it. And like, I think it was a way for us to be like making music, even though it's like, it would be interesting to hear, like Paulina would randomly just be like, I got this awesome like fire burning recording. And we'd just be like, oh, okay, next, let's go. Like, it was nice. It's just to hear what was like inspiring or what people's moods were at the moment. Is actually really fun. And it was a way to connect. Even though
I feel like a title to this one has to come naturally. I mean, there feels like there's plenty of things there. I'm not your person, but yeah,
Right.
that feels ripe. Feels ripe for titling.
Well, that actually ties in to the other part of our set.
Yeah. Nice.
Which is our
There you go.
co-commission. I was thinking about it. It's
There
true
you
because
go.
it was kind of what happened to Fong.
Mhm.
So Paulina, you can jump in when you want, but we co-commissioned with Francis Favis, who actually is a Soci alum. I met him when he was at Soci. He's at UT Austin right now. A piece with Fong before the pandemic. Maybe it was like the fall before or something, right?
Mhm.
And we all approached Fong because we were talking about trying to find pieces that could incorporate tech, but be a little different, like not like the MIDI synth, not like the like hit the Roland and get the sound, like something different that incorporates tech. Because actually, that's what we also enjoy, is figuring out tech, even though it wants to destroy our lives. So every show,
I'll
but
check it out.
you know,
I do.
so Fong was like, okay, cool. And then the pandemic happens. And it would be interesting to hear from them, like what, like where they were mentally. But this piece is 100% like on our laptops. And the score is words and getting guided, like how fast to type and how like angry, how many like word mistakes, how many mistakes, and it pairs up to a visual representation of you typing and typing whatever's on there, and the piece on the browser, like there will be added visual elements that happen along with you seeing the text, and it's called rich text format basically. And it's a really cool thing because you're getting the messaging, which I don't want to share too much of because I want people to see, but you're also like, I mean, it has to stem from the pandemic of just like being on your computer and trying to work but not really knowing what to work or what to do. And I think it's really cool, like you get the sounds of the typing that that are automated, but you also can hear the sounds of the person typing, and it becomes like this like very rhythmical wild frenzy. But it's super weird, but I think that's a big pandemic project that came out of it that's very different from improv work. I think, I don't know.
Right, there's like, it feels like there's open, well, I don't know, I got to zoom with Fong and opened up the platform, and my kids were hanging too, and so Elsie and Mabel come up and start typing and like, whoa, like, because it's just so cool the way the platform works. But we were just experimenting with it on the level of like no instructions and just doing stuff. So I'm really excited to see, since it sounds like you don't want to give away the punchline, but there is a message, or not a message, but there is like there's content there besides, which is very cool. Paulina, before we move to our last two questions, is there anything about the set that you've been thinking about besides titles that you've come up with in this moment?
Fun titles for our uncompositions.
I like that. I totally like that. Uncompositions. Yeah, that feels great.
Title. Got it.
No, I think Shelby and Casey really hit it all. I think it's really weird making music right now, and I think everybody has gone in such wild different directions, and so many people are diving into creative projects and doing totally different things. And I think this set is kind of going to be a representation of what that's looked like for us in the last year.
I love that. Well, that's kind of the next question a bit, is like,
Sorry,
what happened? What's happening?
My roommate's doing laundry and my dog was very upset about it.
We'll have to edit this out. This is unacceptable on the Broken Bound podcast. I'm just playing. During the next question is a bit about the pandemic. Like I think maybe started doing these Brooklyn Bounds again. I don't know, not that far into the pandemic. I don't know. And a lot of the questions at the beginning were kind of like, what does it mean for an artist or for a musician to think about making music during this time? For me, the beginning of the pandemic was like, I love playing for people. Wait a minute, that part of my life is gone. You know, then, you know, that there was more of that, but then George Floyd was murdered. Black Lives Matter became a much bigger conversation in our scene, though obviously it had been a conversation for a long time, but just the deliberateness of the conversation kind of got brought into the world that I'm in, and maybe the world that you're in as well, I imagine. So that intensity of this year, and I feel like I could just keep adding, you know, the election, the dot, you know, so many things. Like this year has been just so intense on that level, and on a way that for me, I feel like every month I'm reevaluating, like, what does it mean to do what we do during this time? Like what is my purpose, or like, you know, like what is the goodness that I should be working on? Shouldn't I just be doing something that's more practically helpful? No, wait a minute, music is so important. You know, I just go and it's like, I don't know if this is resonating with y'all, right? Like in any given day, you're like, you know, no, what I do is vital. No, I need to start to quit my job and go work on something more specifically useful, you know? So I wonder if it feels cool the way you all have described, like finding a way of working during the pandemic that's been really new, and it feels really energizing and wonderful, a way for you all to connect and make new music, and I'm really excited to hear that. But what have you all been thinking about as artists in terms of just this time? Like, has it changed the way you thought about your process, or has it changed it 8,000 times and you're back to the beginning, or like, what's your process been? Yeah,
I'll answer. Mine has changed 8,000 times. Mine has been not necessarily with us three and what we do, but me as a person. Like when the pandemic started and basically all of our work was just taken, basically, it was really disheartening to see not only like everybody around us not having their work and not knowing where to find it and how to find inspiration and what's the purpose of it, but it was also really disheartening to see the world, or not the world, I'll say United States, just our country. It was really disheartening to see the reaction from our country to, like, what does art, and I'm using a big words here, what does art mean, and like how, like, what does it mean to us? It clearly means everything. Streaming television shows, like, television is art. Like, everybody required it during the pandemic. But the people behind them, it seemed like that didn't matter. Like supporting, like finding ways of supporting workers outside of unemployment and things like that. And so for me, I was like, what am I doing? Like, if another pandemic happens, it's just, this is what's going to happen to us, and I'm like agreeing to it, like, because I'm doing this work. So for a long time, that's how I felt, and I go in waves. I still like feel that, and it's really disheartening. But then there'll be moments where, you know, we get to see someone do something really cool in a virtual show, or we get together and we put a sketch, and it's like, this is nice. Like, I know I'm providing, and not me, but our world, what we do as artists, or whatever, which that feels like a heavy word even for me, is providing part of our culture, like a part of it. And whether or not, like, person in Wisconsin or person in New York believes that I provide to their culture, that's okay. But I know I'm a part of providing in part, my culture and someone's culture, and it means something. And that's even heavier. But like, I go in waves. I go in waves.
Yeah, I remember having this reaction early on. I mean, some people who are close to me, who I really respect, you know, maybe extended family or friends, would send a text, but you're just like, you know, artist, we need you now, you know, and being like, yeah, I'm also trying to get my kid through school, or trying to go to the grocery store with a bandana over my face because I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, you know, what do you mean, artists, we need you now? Like, you know, like, it felt like you can't say like, we really need this, and then not support what it is during, you know, I remember having that frustration for a while, which feels like you were speaking to.
Well, it felt like the support had to come from like organizations, like smaller other organizations, and not just like our government at the time, or our, you know, whatever. And I was just like, what is happening? happening. Like, these organizations are figuring out COVID funding for artists, but like we're not all figuring it out as a nation. And but like we as people require it. We stream music every day. We stream television shows. We have paintings on our wall. We're watching live stream programs. Like it's, that's where I'm like, there's some juxtaposition. There's some opposites here that are not lining up. Yeah. Yeah. That's me though. Like that's how I feel. I go in waves.
Oh yeah. I would definitely agree with that. I would say like as in and around things that had to do with like, I would say anything that exists in like the bubble of what I would consider my professional career. I think I have, like Shelby has said, like have experienced a level of just like existential rage in the last year that like, I don't think I've been able to touch with like the longest stick ever in my life. Like the feeling,
existential rage,
like existential rage of just, and like to what Shelby's speaking on is dead on. Like I think this year of my predominant, like I would say, coping mechanism of someone that like has almost exclusively not worked in the last year because of COVID, I went to practicing at a volume that I have not been able to since college. Like I was like, that's the thing I know how to click into, is like a regimented schedule of like goals and objectives to meet. That's how I know how to like keep myself organized, and then would still, would do that as my like, this will end, you have to do something in the meantime, you have to push through it, like that kind of methodical thing. And then every so often, like what Shelby's saying, like you like are just met with news of like yet another way we had to just accept the fact that our entire ecosystem was absolutely unsupported. And it was, and I kind of exist as a believer that it's like, look, to a certain extent, being an artist is a bit of a selfish choice. We could have all been doctors or nurses, and at some point, like we chose the field that has a lot of value, but also like exists because like we do it because it brings us joy. And because it brings other people joy, hopefully. But like first and foremost, I picked this career field because it's the thing that makes me happiest, not something that like one-to-one meets a need for someone's physical well-being or something like that. But it's still just like that same thing of like, how can we be told over and over again, like a ton of other industries we've seen this year, like we're told over and over again that there's value and that people want us and are ready for us to be back and they want the stages open, but it's like we would like to see proof of that. Like if the stage is open and none of your artists are still in the field because they couldn't be anymore, because you didn't give them a capacity to be able to sustain this. Like you don't actually, you think like you might think you do, but like to a certain extent you don't, because it's like, unless you're willing to take care of the whole process, like you're really only talking about like wanting like the couple of things you care about. And it's like, otherwise it's just like there would have to have been more done to have felt like we like really came out of this feeling like, oh yeah, people really want us here and care about us thriving. But that definitely wasn't an impression that I came out of this year with.
Yeah.
Whew, y'all. Paulina, I'm sure you've been feeling just super optimistic and happy about the world and feeling very vital.
No, nobody has.
I know.
How can you? It's important to hold out hope, but it's very difficult on the day-to-day because there is so much coming at you. Something that I have been thinking about a lot lately, as there are these little glimmers of hope, and then everything feels like it goes south again, and then there's a little glimmer of hope, and then it goes south again. In 2016, right after the election, I remember going to school the next day and sitting in a percussion literature class at like 7 p.m. And we're a bunch of very, very progressive art students, really excited about like playing contemporary music and making social progress and doing wonderful things. And there was just this heavy, heavy energy of, oh my God, it's all over. Everything's on fire. We're coming to an end here.
Yeah.
And Al brought in an article that Margaret Atwood had written. And it was, I just keep coming back to the thought of this article because it said essentially, everything is bad. There have been moments of bad before, and what keeps perpetuating the good and the hopefulness is artists. You continue speaking about these things, you continue creating, you continue finding these ways to express yourself even when everything is shit around you. And that's what keeps things moving, and that's what keeps those little glimmers of hope coming back, is that people are creating and moving forward. So even though there are weeks at a time where it feels impossible and there are so many other things to focus on and so many other places to put your energy, it's so important to come back to it, because that's what moves our society forward, is creating and working together, and art is, just one expression of that.
Yeah.
I want to read. I would love if you don't know where to find that Margaret Atwood article, I'd love to read that. My pandemic world has been like, I can only watch 20 to 30 minute shows of like 3 times through Schitt's Creek and Pin 15 and whatever, and somehow now like we started Handmaid's Tale and we're like stopped in the second season because it's just like we can't do it. And this week we've started to watch it again, and I'm just like every night, like me and Beth get through our day and we're like, okay, we're gonna watch Handmaid's Tale. It's just like, and I respect it so much. And Margaret Atwood's a badass, and that show is amazing. And you're just like, yeah, like, but I, Paulina, what you were saying about just being in class the day after. I mean, I had that feeling in 2016, 17 for sure, and I've had that feeling this year too as a teacher, like where it's like the stuff I teach most, at least to undergrads, is like very abstract coordination exercises, and I think it's very vital in terms of just like you can do so much with it as a musician, but it's like you're sitting through some of the worst shit ever, like whatever it is, the world is on fire, with in terms of racism and equity, in terms of COVID, and everything is on fire, and you're like, okay, do you think you could do like 3 against 2, and you're and you're just like, what is this hour, and I'm sure the students just like, Jason, is this really like, is this really the best use of our time, but something maybe you said, Casey, just the like the put one foot in front of the other, like there's a place for that, totally.
Oh yeah,
I feel like, to the structure and the rigor of practice, whatever your practice is, but balancing that with just like the really important things, yeah, it feels like that's just like what we're all trying to learn this year. So it's just like, madness.
Yeah.
I would love to hear, I don't want to cut this off if anybody else has anything else to say, but I do have one last question that can bring us out on a more positive, not just a lighter note, not even more, but I love, you guys have all been dropping some nuggets. So are there any nuggets that are ready to be dropped, or do we like the last question?
I'm ready for the last question.
Okay, sounds
great.
good.
Great. I just didn't, want to make sure. Exactly. Well, so, I also, Paulina, when you were saying 2016, to me, what happened for me in 2016, I feel like, was that so had been maybe before that doing a lot of shows that were like about things that we thought were important, not so many other people thought were important, like it's like, we're gonna tour a gun show, like nobody wants to hear this show, but we are doing it. And then like it felt like during Trump years, like we started to transition just to where like just the act of playing music for each other, for audiences, and the act of sharing stages with other players, and the act of just being in a room together, just those acts of shared experience felt so much more important during that time, I think. And then just, I think what oftentimes gets so through these things are like, it's like the stories we tell each other in the van of like, oh, you remember when this happened, or oh, there was this thing, right? And like occasionally those stories are really triumphant. More often they're like, the shit that happens, like Shelby, when you're talking about tech and like loving to deal with technology, but then it always explodes, so like so many of them are stories like that or whatever it is, breaking instrument, all that kind of stuff that becomes the kind of like, and I'm sure as we tell the stories, they get blown, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure it was like, some like small, like crack in a glass bottle turns into an explosion, like those kind of things.
That happened in the show.
Yeah.
It did happen
in the
show.
That happened in the state.
Well, this is great.
Exploded during the show.
Because we're gonna get 3 stories. Like what are the like the pre-pandemic sharing the stage, playing music for people, like what are Troika stories or memories, or what are you can each, if you each could share one.
I feel like
essential one, if I may.
Yes.
Yes.
Show at SOCI. Because I don't know if you remember this, Casey and I think there was like some massive storm.
Yep.
And both of our flights got delayed.
We were
And
both
we didn't know if
teaching
we were gonna make it.
Because Paulina and I, the week leading up to the Saturday that we played Quinn's piece, Paulina and I were both teaching summer marching band at separate high schools in Georgia. And we were both having to fly out of, I was like flying out of Jacksonville and she was flying out of Atlanta, and we both got caught in this crazy storm.
This is the only time anyone in So Percussion has seen me cry, by the way.
True.
Only time.
True.
It was the doozy.
It was wild. It was
A
wild.
real doozy. Finally, I got on the plane. I got to Princeton around 2 a.m. and Shelby and John, I think, came and picked me up. We went back.
It was me and Russell.
Russell.
Yeah.
Russell. It was
Perfect.
Russell.
Yeah.
Shelby and Russell came and picked me up, and we went back to the dorms and slept for like 3 hours, woke up the next day, and Shelby and I had a rehearsal without Casey to make sure that all of the tech
because we had just learned something that we weren't doing correctly
Right.
with Quinn's piece. Not playing. We had just done something different, like technologically.
Yeah.
And I was like, Paulina, I don't want to weird you out, but like this could change something.
Wake up.
So, it was like 5 or 6 a.m. We were both on minimal sleep, and Shelby, of course, is in the middle of SOCI, so she's, exhausted and running all over the place.
And the day of concerts.
Yeah, the marathon. Yeah.
Yep.
I'll never forget it.
And all the while they're doing like a last minute rehearsal, I'm getting like phone calls and like voice memos of like, it sounds like this now, and like holding it up to the thing.
I love
and
that.
all the while, like I'm like I had like a full meltdown in the Jacksonville airport. It was great. And
you really did.
I really did. I was like,
I think we all had meltdowns.
We all were having a bad time. We were having a bad time. I ended up flying out of Jacksonville at like 5 a.m. the morning of the concert. We played at like 3 p.m.
MVP to Linda
Princeton.
And Steve Blesinger. MVPs.
For really being able to make airline
Flights
reservations
happen.
so fast.
Wow.
So fast. So I ended up not even flying into Princeton. I flew into Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
Hit the ground, changed into my concert clothes, ran to the Hertz, got in a car and broke every speed limit from Allentown to Princeton, and I ran into the music building 45 minutes before that concert started. I remember at one point meeting Josh in the lobby, and he just goes, "I'm so glad you're here. I was really ready to step in at the last minute if I had to. I don't want to have to do that. I'm really glad you're here." And I was like, "I'm so glad I made it."
Oh, I didn't know any of this.
We were on full adrenaline.
And that performance was good because all of us were just like, our stress was at our eyeballs.
That's why
like when you
watch the video, I'm the one giving cues to change sections, and I'm just like,
Yeah. Boom.
But that
Yeah.
really, that was the perfect piece for all of that to happen
Yeah.
because it's loud and everybody's just playing big loud notes. And it was like,
It
all
was
right, if
getting
I
out
have
that
high adrenaline,
aggression.
I can't be playing something quiet and delicate because it's going to be a shaky disaster. But this piece, this is the one.
And I remember we did a really fast sound check on it, and I don't know who it was, but someone was in the room and just told us it could be a bit louder.
I think Quinn said that.
It wasn't.
Quinn
It might
said
have been
that.
Quinn. He was like, "Oh yeah, it could be
Yeah.
louder." We're like, okay,
I got this.
Quinn,
We got
Quinn was
that.
like,
we got that for you.
yeah. No,
Oh,
we had
amazing.
separate meltdowns. Mine was during y'all's composer reading concert. Casey's was at some point in this airport.
Was at the Jacksonville airport.
I think Paulina's was in her airport.
Oh my goodness.
I don't remember where my meltdown was. I just remember Casey after the concert. I was, of course there was whiskey after the concert, after all of
Extra.
that. And I remember laying in mine and Casey's shared room and Casey shoving me awake and forcing me to take out my contacts because I was so exhausted that I just got in the room and
And
collapsed.
that's a good friend though. That's a
Yeah.
good friend.
I
I
know.
hate sleeping in my contacts. That's a good friend.
gotta
We
do it.
always watching out for each other's
Yeah.
contacts.
Okay, so it feels like that was it started off as a maybe Paulina story that became a Casey story that Shelby jumped on and became Troika story.
Yeah,
Is there
big one.
is there a happy one? Is there a like
Yeah.
when
I
you all
feel
think
like
of like
it's always-
this is a badass show we played, it was so
I think-
great to be on stage. Everyone is probably.
It's
but
funny. It's really easy to remember the like insane stories because of the adrenaline. We definitely have one that's worse. And
Is this the New York
this is the
show?
one where your car got towed,
Yeah.
literally, and same thing. Your car had the vibraphone, and you
That
were
was
going
my
to go get it
breakdown.
from the Navy
wow.
yard.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
I've been
honestly-
to the Navy Yard to get a towed
Yeah.
car.
And we
Yeah.
didn't, and we didn't even like celebrate afterward. We were just like, see y'all
Good night.
Oh,
later.
God.
It was a
Go to bed.
wild night. That's a longer story, but I think our last show was like just the best.
Mm.
It was amazing. So Truman State University brought us in to do a show and like master class and stuff like this,
Awesome.
and it was like, if you could ask for a more optimal situation, like I don't know what it is, even working like for you guys, it was literally like they brought us in, we got the rehearsal hall for like 2 or 3 days.
Amazing.
We got to do like, we got to coach some of their pieces, and we got to like do a master class, and then we got a show, and we got to just leave our stuff set up for days.
Oh,
And
amazing.
it was just great. Like the students there were just like pumped to have us. And it was a student from SOSI who like brought us in, Christian Coleman. He's lovely. And it was just a great, like, for it to be our last show in 2019 in November, it was just like so much fun, and we had a great time. And then we went to Cincinnati, like we drove to Cincinnati afterward and just got to hang out with Paulina's mom and
Yay.
drink some wine.
Shout
And
out
it was
to
just
Lydia. She's
like,
great.
it was just like a really sweet experience. Like because we've had 2 very stressful scenarios, and we've not played that many shows. And like, it was just like,
You
thank
did a good
God.
one.
Like,
Mhm.
yeah, it was. Our show, we played Jerry Seo's Shui. I never want to say that wrong. I think I did.
Mm.
Shui. We played.
Is that Crotales
we basically-
and
Yeah,
Wow,
we
yeah,
basically
so
played
beautiful.
all our hits, and we
Yeah.
played a new commission at the end, and it was just a lot of fun.
Awesome.
I felt like it went well too. Like we had no like, oh, that piece fell apart. Like we had none of those. So you can't leave that show thinking anything bad. Like
No.
That's
which
great.
is-
I'm
which
glad
is
that
great.
was the last one, right? It feels like
Yeah.
that we are gunning for playing shows again for people. The last one, you guys went out on a high.
Yeah.
Yep.
This
Yep.
Broken Bound is going to be a high, but then let's get people in a
It
room
goes up
again.
from here.
Goes up. Love it. Well,
Do we have existential rage?
yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. But it's fine.
love that everyone's smiling through their existential rage right
Yeah.
now.
I mean, you gotta, you just,
It's a Truman Show over here.
you just recognize it and move on.
Oh my
But no,
goodness.
that was awesome, and I love that school. I love.
Yeah, that was a great
It was
one.
a lot of fun.
Very
Yeah.
cool. That's a good one. Thanks for
Mhm.
bringing us out on that high, Shelby
Of course.
/ Troika. So this show is May 27th. It's at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Paulina, you have to wake up at 4 p.m. Sorry.
Gosh.
And oh geez, 4 p.m. You guys join us in the chat. I'm sure you will. I'm scared of Facebook, so I'm always on the YouTube chat. You all are welcome to be wherever you want to be, but come over to the YouTube chat. It's fun over there.
It's
I'd love to hang
cooler.
with you. Yeah, I would love to hang with you all. Yeah. Well, thanks for doing this. It's a pleasure to talk with you all. I can't wait to see you all in person. Shelby, I saw you in person, and it was so wonderful and surprising. It was on the street.
It was insane.
Yeah, it was like, that's Shelby. I've seen Shelby on Zoom so much. I haven't seen Shelby in real
Right?
life.
Honestly, it feels like that. You're just like, wait, but you're not in your room.
Yeah.
You don't exist outside your room.
Yeah.
Like,
Where's the yellow on the wall? Where's the strange.
oh my gosh.
Well, you guys
It
are
was
awesome. I'm really, really pumped that your uncompositions are happening and that Fong's piece is happening. And that you guys have so much cool stuff to be done. So thanks for hanging. Doing
Thank you
this podcast.
for having
Yeah,
us.
thank
you.
This was awesome.
See you
Yeah.
Thursday, May 27th.
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Take it easy.